This is Sarah Stewart Holland.
This is Beth Silvers. You're listening to Pantsuit Politics. In the midst of what has been a really difficult month, we are hearing from so many of you that you want our elected representatives to know how frustrated you are. And we are really delighted to be joined today by Senator Andy Kim, who is clearly one of those elected representatives who's listening to people. Mm-hmm. So we had a great conversation with him about how to be effective when you're calling your representatives. He speaks to those of you in red states who wonder if it's worth communicating with your elected officials. We talk about his overall philosophy about this administration, how he thinks Democrats need to build a movement that really counters the MAGA movement. And then he sticks with us for outside of politics, where he talks about movies and music and his family. And overall, this conversation gave me a lot of hope that I needed this week, and I hope it'll do the same for you.
We'd love for you to take 1 minute, literally just 1 minute, and answer 5 questions for us in our listener survey. Our team is meeting next week to do some planning and prioritizing, and we want input from all of you. The survey is linked in the show notes and on our website, pantsuitpoliticsshow.com. It really is just 5 questions, guys. It will take you about 1 minute. Thank you so much for taking a precious minute of your life to share your thoughts on the show with us. We really appreciate it. It really was grounding to talk to Senator Kim. We also spent the spicy bonus episode of Pantsuit Politics yesterday processing a lot of the chaos so we could have this grounding conversation with Senator Kim today. So if you want to hear our thoughts on all the developments since Tuesday, and there have been quite a few, you're going to want to check out our bonus episode over on Substack.
Senator Kim, thank you so much for joining us for Pantsuit Politics. We're really thrilled that you're here and that we were able to make this happen.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
We have spent a lot of time over the past couple of weeks just processing the emotion that we feel watching ICE and Customs and Border Patrol operate in communities throughout the interior of our country. And I'm really glad that you're here because I don't want to get stuck there. We have an audience full of people who want to be the most effective citizens they can be.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know when you're contacting your representatives what to ask for. And I wonder if you could take us through just what's on the Senate whiteboard. What could the Senate do right now? What's possible?
When it comes to like DHS and ICE in particular? Yeah. So, I mean, look, well, the Senate, first and foremost, has a lot if we actually exerted it, and you know, the idea that our Constitution laid out is that, you know, Congress is Article 1, that we are the ones that give the direction to Article 2 to the executive on how to engage. Unfortunately, you know, that's been eroding over time, and in particular right now, I mean, it's devastating. I go as far as to say that, you know, we do not have 3 functioning branches of government anymore. You know, we have one branch of government that's just trying to dominate the other 2. And, you know, and we see that manifested. But like, you know, look, like some of the things that I keep hearing about from people in New Jersey is like, you know, we don't want ICE or CBP being able to just have these administrative warrants and be able to come into our homes. We don't want people just stopping us on the street corner and demanding to know if we're a citizen or not. And like, you know, I literally have community leaders telling me that they're carrying around passports now or their green cards now just because they're so fearful of being, you know, stopped and not having that and what could ensue from that. You know, those are all things that Congress could require, you know, like requiring accountability. Like, you know, how hard is it for us to have an independent investigation about these shootings? Like, I don't trust DHS to do an investigation of their own. I don't even trust DOJ. I don't trust Attorney General Bondi to be able to do this. We need a true independent investigation. Like, that's, again, something that Congress can mandate and push on. It's just that, you know, we just see congressional leaders on the Republican side just unwilling to do their jobs. You know, I often, for instance, call, you know, Speaker Johnson, I call him Secretary Johnson because he acts more like a cabinet official in the Trump administration rather than a leader of a separate branch of government. So I'm not going to just make excuses and point fingers, but to answer your question, there's so much that that Congress can do. There's so much that Congress can do, like saying, like, look, CBP, it's about border control. They should operate near the
At the
border. They shouldn't
border.
be able to go wherever they want. Like these are things that we can require. And some of these things are things that we have required in the past, but this administration just actively chooses not to follow. And that's because so much of this is just masterminded by Stephen Miller, who I believe is the most dangerous person in this country. Someone
I
who
agree.
is pushing all of this, agenda, and really has to get to the core of the problem, which is a deep rot in this administration about their beliefs in this country and what diversity means, what plurality means, and it's such a scary moment.
If you were to tell one of our listeners, like, when you call, this should be the top priority ask, because that's what people ask us all the time, especially with regards to government funding as we're coming up on this deadline. There's a lot of chatter about should we remove this funding from the appropriation bill so they can continue negotiations and require more of DHS. Is that where you feel like everybody is sort of solidifying around that next step?
Yeah. So first and foremost is we need to have these independent votes on these appropriations bills. We can't just have them all lumped in. The reason why they're trying to lump it in is because they know that there's huge debate and concern about DHS. So they're hoping that because we want to see like, for instance, on the healthcare, on the health appropriations, like, look, we were able to restore a lot of the funding to NIH that Trump cut, right? Like that's they're all it's not the full measure of what I want, but it's better than where we're at right now. So Republicans are hoping that they can just kind of leverage that, and they need to learn that that's not the case, and it shouldn't just be about what the Democrats are willing to do. Like, I hope your listeners and the viewers, like, I'm sure they live all over the country, and they live in places where they have Republican members of Congress and senators, and like, they need to hear from you all. And when you look at what's happened, whether it's Bovino being pushed out of his top job, or some of the backtracking that the Republicans have done this week, I hope you all, the viewers, I hope you see, like, it's because of
It's
you.
working.
It's because of
Yeah.
your voice and your noise, and just saying, like, this is not the America that I want to raise my kids and my grandkids in. This is not a partisan issue. This is something that just gets deep to the core about what we expect in terms of safety and stability in our own nation. And so it's important that they are hearing from you. And the other thing I'll just say is, yes, like, please, like, if you have certain ideas going forward, separating out the bills, I really say, pushing for, again, showing bipartisanship, showing unanimity around these ideas of accountability, about independent investigation.
Yeah.
Like, Republicans are saying we want it, we should have independent investigations. About, like, again, not requiring that we're carrying on our passports and needing to, fear for, our own safety on our own streets or in our own homes. Like, that should just be a no-brainer. So those are things. The other thing I'll just say, though, is when people are making calls or when you're engaging with me or others, it's really helpful and important for us to hear it in terms of your own story. Hearing about what fears you have. Like I said, I've raised the issue about passwords because I just, it's on, people are doing it. And like,
Yeah.
we live in a time right now when, like, people feel like they have to carry papers around on their citizenship. Like, that's insane that we're at that place. It really hits home to me just what people are experiencing. So, when you're calling, please feel free to tell us your ideas, if there are bills or other things you want us to engage. But what's most important for me is hearing your stories, hearing your raw emotions, hearing your concerns, hearing your worries about your family, because that gives us the context, it gives us something we can tell. I think so much about politics is about storytelling. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that right now we need to tell a story about how what's happening right now is not the America that we are celebrating 250 years anniversary of. that
Yeah.
this is not the America where we want to, raise our kids and our grandkids. And that really is what connects to people on a fundamentally human moment. Like, we need a human moment right now where we can all just say what is happening is wrong.
I think that connects to something else I want to ask you. I find the most helpful thing to hear from senators and representatives, one, are those understandings from your constituents, because for better or for worse, representatives and senators don't live in a closed media environment. They are out on the streets. They are hearing a lot of stories. They're not getting all their news from Facebook. You know what I mean? Like, they're really hearing from people and their experiences. And the other thing that I think is always so interesting is to hear sort of the vibe of your workplace. The other thing that we're not hearing, we see the Senate only through people's public statements and news stories, and it's always so interesting, I think, to hear, okay, yeah, that's what people are saying on Fox News, but this is what I'm experiencing and hearing as a United States Senator from my colleagues within my party and my colleagues across the aisle. Like, all of America is so stressed, and it feels so chaotic and scary. Is that the vibe in the Senate too?
Yeah. So, just the other day, I was, we were in a sort of a closed discussion of probably close to 15, 20 senators, both parties about evenly split. And it was just a chance for us to just reflect on this moment. And there was just a understanding across the board, everybody, that we are in just a very chaotic and uncertain moment that
Wow.
has a level of anxiety beyond what many of us have ever experienced in our time in politics and government. Like,
Wow.
people like I'm relatively new in the Senate, but I'm a newbie. But like, there are some of my colleagues been here 20, 30 years that are telling me like they've never experienced just this sense of anxiety as a nation, quite like what we're seeing right now. So look, like, I'm glad in some ways that we're able to have those open conversations with one another, and not start from a place of just defensive guard, which so often happens when the cameras are around, and that discussion in that room, there are no cameras, and that no one's live tweeting it. It's just like helpful for us to try to have some of that. And look, it's something that I find different than the Senate from the House. Is that we are a smaller number. There's a real expectation that we can have a channel of communication to one another. Whereas in the House, you see a lot more of just the combativeness directly between members, and that really impedes, the ability to have some of this space. But, I'm not going to say it's easy though, because, after that initial discussion about how we're feeling, how we're seeing things, immediately you get to this question of, well, what are we going to do
What are we gonna
about
do
it?
about it?
Right. And then all of a sudden, like, you find impasses right out of the gate. And that's been difficult, but that's why I've
Wow.
been trying to, start with, this sense of like, look, there are certain things that just widespread agreement on from the American people. And for me to relay these stories, like in the same way that, over the last few months, I've been relaying stories about people directly affected by the ACA healthcare cuts. Like, that's important because I know those stories are happening in every state. Or me being able to talk about how, American citizens in New Jersey are feeling, concerned about this, or about, someone who was just detained the other day, and what that family's going through, like those personal stories. That's how I'm communicating a lot to my colleagues, really trying to, to hit home in that way. But it's a challenge. I will say just that my conversations with Republicans in the Senate this week, they are very much feeling the pressure, and I would say not just politically, but they know that the American people are not on their side, and I think they're really feeling it, and there are a lot of concerns, and I'm hopeful that this can be a moment where they can just break away from just this reflexive, do whatever Trump administration tells them to do. There's pushback against senior leaders like Nome and Homan and Miller, unlike anything I've seen yet from Republicans on the Hill. And that needs to continue on
Yeah.
and push on. And, and show this administration that they cannot just do whatever they want to do, which is what their MO has been for the last year.
I am really looking for Congress to get out of this passive mode.
Yeah.
I understand that as a representative, in some sense, your constituents are all your bosses, and I love the humility of that framing. And I understand that the media environment is so intense and works against you in a lot of ways. Like, I see how it might feel like just a pressure cooker constantly. And at the same time, as a citizen, you look at this situation, you think, well, they have to have more power than I do. How can we get them to use it? So one question that we've heard from our audience this week is, can Congress do anything about Stephen Miller? Is there a leadership muscle not directly connected to that legislative function or the function of advice and consent, but some muscle to say to this White House, this is not working and you need to fix it?
Yeah. Look, I agree wholeheartedly. This is something where we need to be showing, just that action is demanded. And I think that's some of what we're trying to do with some of the different appropriations bill, like getting the NIH funding back in and other things, using different tools. But when it comes to like someone like, Stephen Miller, this is, there's a reason why he's in the White House, is because he would never be able to get Senate confirmed for anything in particular. That's why Tom Homan's there, is that they didn't think he could get Senate confirmed in. And like, what I keep saying, and this is what I've been trying to demand both of them, in particular Holman, because I think he's somebody who right now is directly in charge of operations in Minnesota, for instance. Well, look, if he is directly in charge of operations in Minnesota and giving direct orders to a congressionally funded and mandated entity like Department of Homeland Security, he should come before Congress. He should not be able to be basically the acting Homeland Security secretary in Minnesota and not be accountable to us. So, that's something, for instance, I've been demanding Homan come before Congress and be able to do that. If he's functioning as the lead of ICE and CBP, he should come before us as the functional lead. Stephen Miller, this is a situation where, again, having Senator Tillis and others speaking out against him, showing that, this is somebody who is completely felt unrestrained and unaccountable to the American people, because he can hide at the White House where they don't require any Senate confirmations.
Or on a military base where he's living right now.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the types of issues. But there are different avenues that we have to the White House. So, for instance, another person I think is incredibly dangerous to this country is Russell Vought. And the OMB director is someone that needed Senate confirmation. That is something that should have, a greater level of accountability to Congress. So finding the other avenues that we have to put pressure on the White House. The White House also uses, this particular method of hiring people through these kind of special appointments. We should just cut that off. That should not be allowed. You should not allow like Elon Musk to be coming in as this special appointment where he doesn't have to divest from all of his money and all of his businesses. This administration is weaponized and using this unlike anything that's done before. And we should just cut it off and say, look, like if you want to serve the American people, like you have to serve. You can't just find these loopholes, into it. And the last thing I'll just say is, remember, like the way I sort of frame this, especially being from Jersey, is like what I'm seeing in the Trump administration is just mob boss tactics.
Yeah.
This is just how a mob boss operation works. And unfortunately, we know that kind of stuff from Jersey, right? And so, like, shining a light on just the blatant corruption that is happening, the grift that is occurring, whether it's, all these people funding the ballroom that are just trying, if you look at who's funding the ballroom, they all have business before the president. They all are trying to influence the president. And when you look at someone like Stephen Miller and others, like these are the ones that are funneling all of that and creating that. And the more we can shine a light on that, the better. So, for instance, I'm on one of the subcommittees that does investigations. We're trying to use our different tools and our resources to really dig up and highlight that kind of corruption and grift. I used to be a career public servant in the executive branch. I have a lot of contacts there still. I'm able to try to get and hear from them directly in ways that can protect them, can ensure whistleblower protection status and other things like that. So, using these different levers that we have to be able to get information that isn't in the public yet, be able to surface it and be able to shine a light on what Stephen Miller and others are doing, and to try to find other avenues to be able to build the oversight. Those are some of the things that I'm trying to push on to try to maximize it and make sure I'm not just sitting on my hands and thinking the only thing I can do is, send out a social media post. It's important to communicate, but it's also important to communicate that we are taking direct action and that there are things that are happening that we are doing to be able to mobilize, because the problems that we face are so significant. We can't just wait until the midterm elections to be able to try to save our country. It requires saving right now.
I don't know how you keep up. I can't keep up with the stories of grift over the course of the week. I know you care about healthcare, and there was the one this week about the nursing home corporations that made donations and got the federal rule where you don't have to have as many staff for the nursing home attendees dismissed that people have been fighting for years.
Yeah. And there's I mean, that one got my attention as well, in part because I gave a major speech a couple weeks ago about how my father was just recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and how challenging that's been for us financially as a family, but also in terms of making sure he can get care. And I raise that because this issue about care, like Alzheimer's doesn't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. Like, the people that are affected by the challenges of care run the entire spectrum of America. And these issues about like this particular story about nursing homes, these can hit, it can hit, a note and a thread within us that can really get past some of the partisan divisions that we have. It can break through them, because like no one wants seniors that are vulnerable or disabled or suffering from illnesses and challenges to be taken advantage of, for profit. The idea that people are profiting off of and trying to pocket Medicaid money or this or that, at the expense of some of the most vulnerable people that are very well my parents or our grandparents, our parents. Like, those are the things that we need to shine a light on. Like, those are the things that can break through in the same way that what's happening in Minnesota is breaking through beyond just the partisanship. There are other issues like that. And that's why it's important. I think corruption is one of the deepest ones, because, so many people, like, we live in the time of the greatest amount of distrust in government, right? Like, in my home state, 84% of people in New Jersey believe that their elected officials are corrupt. And look, like, they're not entirely wrong, right? Like, I am in the U.S. Senate because of a corruption scandal of a predecessor, right? So, like, we need to engage on this, because Trump got into power in part because he was talking about cleaning this up, taking this on. He was not from, he's not somebody that came from the...
He's going to drain the swamp.
And then what we realize is he's draining it just right for him. Like, his inaugural speech, when he talks about a golden age, well, we realize now, a year in, it's not a golden age for me and you. It's a golden age for the billionaires that were on stage with him. It's a golden age for Geo Group and Core Civic, these for-profit detention companies that are working with ICE and CBP, putting away thousands of people and making billions of dollars. Like, that's who the golden age is for. And the more that we show that, the more that we say, hey, look, Trump has made billions of dollars since January 20th last year. How much has your family made? The more that we can really expose, just what is happening, which is, just a level of profiting off of the Oval Office and our public government in a way that we've never seen before.
Never seen. Oh.
Well, first, I just want to say Alzheimer's is hard, and thanks for sharing that with us. And I'll be thinking about you all. We've been through that in my family a couple times, and it's brutal. I have appreciated how much you've been out in front and saying, hey, they are doing everything they can to overwhelm you so that you don't pick up on these threads that can break through, that can speak to people of all political persuasions that affect your everyday life. In that vein, I want to ask you if you share some of the worries that we're hearing from our audience. Are you worried about election security in the midterms? Are you worried about having free and fair elections this year?
I am worried about it. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried about it. I will say that the fact that we've seen a number, we had major elections in New Jersey this past year, in Virginia this past year, and in special elections all throughout the country. The fact that I haven't seen any significant effort to try to undermine those or question the results gives me a little bit
True.
more comfort that if there really was an apparatus underway to the extent of my worst fears, I think we would have seen some of that already, trying to discredit Democratic strength in these different elections. But the main thing is we need to be prepared for the worst. And in New Jersey, I mean, I can speak for that. I know they did in Virginia too. We went to the maximum when it comes to election observers, in terms of having lawyers on hand ready to be able to dive in at a moment's notice, really trying to work with the Secretary of State and others and the clerks and others to have I's dotted, T's crossed on the ballots and everything else, trying to anticipate what the questions will be, make sure everything's in strong order. So I felt like it gives a bit of a roadmap for what we can try to do elsewhere around the country. And I've been engaged with people all over the nation, as well as senators from all over the country, talking about this directly. I even had a conversation with the governor yesterday. Not my governor, but another governor was asking about these questions. So we're trying to do that. Now, the challenge is like, that's fine in a state where it's a Democratic governor and has, the Democratic points. What we're trying to get a sense of, what are the areas where we are most concerned? Are there certain people in positions of power, influence that over elections that, may seek to potentially use their power to undermine credibility? And so mapping that out and trying to make sure we have ability to shine a light on that and counter that is important. So
Yeah.
I just say I'm concerned about it, but I hope people know there is a lot of effort going into preparation for that. We ran through a lot of that in the 24 cycle, and we ran through that a lot in the 25 cycle, getting ready for the midterms.
A lot of people were introduced to you by seeing you cleaning up in the Capitol after January 6th. I want to ask you if you're worried about Trump trying to stay in power again at the end of this term.
It certainly scares me how he refuses to, well, how he keeps talking about it. He just he has the Trump 2028 hats and whatnot. I think that's scary, because regardless of what he actually does, he is undermining the credibility of our Constitution just by making it seem like it's possible, or even talking about it. And so that just needs to stop. And the fact that the Republicans, including some of my colleagues, the number of the Republican senators I talked to will fully admit to me that's completely wrong. That is not something that's constitutionally allowed. And I'm just like, say it out loud.
Saying out loud.
Say it to
In front
him.
of a mic, preferably.
Yes, there should be no uncertainty about his ineligibility to run again. And that is something that just needs to push and get out there. Look, it concerns me. There are a lot of things that concern me, even if he doesn't, just the ability for him to pardon himself and pardon everybody who's ever worked in his administration, try to reduce accountability. And no doubt, even if Trump doesn't run again, he will try to influence whoever comes next and have them do his bidding. And this is something that I want people, and I know many understand, but I keep hitting home, especially at the Capitol, which is like, look, for all his faults and all of the things he's doing horribly wrong, when you look at what Trump is, he is a movement leader. He is a leader of a MAGA movement. And this is exactly why just politics as usual doesn't work. Like, we cannot think about this as just like two political parties trying to engage.
Yeah.
There is no Republican Party anymore. It's been completely captured by this MAGA movement. And you see it by how senators feel like they have to do, whatever Trump says. Otherwise, with one tweet, he could ruin their political career and their political career, right? So they're fearful about that. But that shows that if for us, we have to build our own movement. We need to. You cannot take on a MAGA movement just through normal political processes. We need to think about our work as a movement. And that's what I keep saying is like we need champions both inside and outside of government working together to build that kind of movement. And so, that's what we need to mobilize for us to be able to stand up against this, because the threat will not be over the day that Trump is no longer in the Oval Office. We learned that lesson before. This is going to be a long-term problem that we will sustain. Things that have been unleashed in our country. There's a bit of a Pandora's box here. There are things that are happening in this country right now that are not reversible. There are things that we have to understand are broken, and we're not going to be able to just fix it all with a Democratic trifecta down the road, right? And we really need to think strategically about, how we go about this.
Yeah. Do you have a few minutes to talk to us about outside of politics?
Sure, please. Yes.
Please. Right? That's how we feel at the end of every episode. Please. Okay, so first off, we've got Oscar noms, and we hear you're a film guy.
Yeah.
How many of the Best Picture nominees have you seen?
Oh, wow. I think a good number of them.
Okay, what's your favorite? It better be Hamnet.
I have not seen Hamnet yet.
What? Okay, actually,
I saw if you get me a babysitter, I'll go and watch it.
I saw it with my boys are 14 and 16. I saw it with them. And it was like having my heart pulled out of my chest and stopped on. So, only go if you're ready to cry your face off.
Okay.
Just saying. Just be prepared.
Well, look, what I'll say is I just during the snow day that we had, my wife and I were trapped in one night, and we just kind of binge watched the show on Netflix, Adolescence.
Oh, my gosh. It won a bunch of Emmys, didn't it? I feel like it won or Golden Globes, maybe,
Yeah, and this year, the young actor, I think he was like 13 or 14 when they filmed it. He's been, he was winning all the awards. But that was I haven't cried like that watching something, especially when I'm watching something about like little kids and the problems with social media. But anyways, I just there's so much great stuff that's out there, and I've been really impressed with a lot of the movies that are out. But I'll still have to check out Hamnet.
They're all very political. One battle after another. It was just an accident. Like there's just a lot of political movies out right now.
Yeah, there are. But I think I appreciate though that I feel like they they're not necessarily taking on directly what we're going at. They're able to kind of raise these issues in a way for us to kind of have a little bit of a step back. So I found that to be. I don't think I would have been able to take something that's directly related to what we're going through, because what we're going through feels like it's
hard enough.
Sometimes.
So true. It's so true.
Well, on my list for outside of politics for you is I heard that you're a musician. I would like to know everything about that.
Well, I'm not sure if I can turn it, but you might be able to see I got my
nice
Strat on the wall. I got an acoustic over here. My cello's over here. I've been playing music since I was probably like 4 or so. My parents often say that that music was my first language because I could play I knew my scales before I knew my full ABCs because I started.
Oh my gosh.
And so I love it, and it helps me just, I don't know, like it was something where I think for a while I used to think that like music was kind of this like extracurricular, like when I have time, but I can physically feel when if I haven't played in a while, I can physically feel that like I'm stressed, that it's like a part of who I am, the music. And what's been exciting for me over the last 10 years, I think, is that I've been doing a lot more of my own music. Like I write my own songs. That I'm working on that, I've been putting off because of all this insanity that's happening. Even on cello, I've been writing a number of pieces on cello, which is great because when you're a kid, you're just taught to like play, music written hundreds of years ago. There was no real effort to try to cultivate in me when I was in classical music to compose. And I just find that to be bizarre, when you kind of think about it. I think I've learned so much more about music and my own interest in music when I've started to create. And now I got little kids, and I'm
I
trying
was
to
going to say, are either of your kids into music?
yeah, my older son, he's 10 years old. He's got a lot of talent with piano. I mean, he's a better pianist than I am now. And I'm trying to now push all my unfulfilled dreams onto him. I'm kidding, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But it's great to see. I mean, it's really great to see him, just be able to produce. I mean, it's just one of the most extraordinary experiences as a parent to watch your kid, create something novel, right? And it's beautiful to see him enjoying it. I wish he had a little bit more discipline, and I'm struggling as a parent to figure out how to do that without becoming a totally overbearing tiger dad. But I'm trying to find that balance.
Okay, so electric and acoustic guitar, a cello. You mentioned piano there. Do you play anything else?
Seriously?
Yeah, I mean, violin. I mean, I try to play everything with strings.
It sounds like any stringed instrument is the answer.
Yeah, I just love string instruments. I just I love the way that they sound. My wife was a jazz saxophonist when she was growing up, so she kind of has that side of it. So that's good. Though, the one thing I think I missed a lot, and I'm sure a lot of parents of young kids feel this. I miss being able to see live music as much as I used to. And that's something I still try to sneak out and be able to catch a show time to time with her. But, that's something that I hope can be a bigger part of my life as my kids get a little bit older.
Okay, one more real quick.
Yeah.
I need our friends from New York City to mute just real fast, just for 5 to 10 seconds.
Just put the earmuffs on or something.
Just turn it down. Just if you live in New Jersey, just turn it down. I think New Jersey bagels are better. When I worked for New Jersey Senate office, we had a fellow who would drive in from Jersey named Fern, and she would bring us bagels from New Jersey. What's your bagel order? And did you see that article about how pumpernickel bagels are dying out and they're going to stop making them? I don't even care. I don't even eat pumpernickel bagels, but I was kind of upset by this.
Part C of this question, sorry. Did I read correctly that you also are a bagel maker?
I do make bagels. Yeah.
My 16-year-old son has started making bagels.
It's fun. Yeah, I lived out in California for a couple years when I was in school, and there wasn't a good bagel anywhere miles and miles and miles. So I just started making my own, and I just I love it. I love the craft. I love it, and it really taught me to appreciate, especially the importance of boiling the bagels.
Yeah,
that's
it's
really
wild to watch it. It really is.
Yeah, a lot of grocery stores, they'll just kind of steam bake their bagels. They're not bagels. I just call them circle bread. That's not a natural, the boiling is necessary for it to actually be called a bagel. But
do you toast? Do you toast your bagels?
Not if it's fresh.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so, that's a big thing. My New York City friends, they will scoff if I ask to toast my bagels. Don't.
I'm not somebody that will be a stickler for others. I mean, but I'm pretty traditionalist. I'm pretty much just an everything bagel, or a sesame or a poppy bagel, and I don't like fancy cream cheeses. I like just kind of just a pretty
don't mix anything in it.
Nothing too crazy in it. Just not too much toppings. I like it pretty simple. But we got a new bagel store in my hometown in Morristown, New Jersey, that we're very excited about, and it's just it's awesome to be able to just see. I feel like that we're having more and more places pop up. Across our state, so it's
but apparently they're not going to have pumpernickel bagels again. I've never eaten a pumpernickel bagel in my life. Why do I care? I just found it very upsetting.
Maybe I'll just start drafting some legislation that will require pumpernickel.
Real solutions is what we're looking for here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Senator Kim, what a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation, and I know look, one last thing. I know we're going through a lot, and people are feeling it, and I just want people to know, you're not alone, and please, keep engaged. I often say that I believe that the opposite of democracy is apathy. It's if you give up and if you feel helpless. These problems are big that we're facing, and like I said, they're long-term challenges that we face deep to the bone. But we can't give up on it, because otherwise I'd be saying that I'm giving up on the future for my 8-year-old and my 10-year-old in this country, and I refuse to do so. So let's keep at it together, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank
service
you.
and for being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you so much to Senator Kim and his team for making that conversation happen. Thank you to all of you for spending your time listening and for all you're doing out there in the world, for all the contacts that you're making with representatives, for all the communication that you're having with us, for all you're doing in your communities. We'll be back with you with a new episode on Tuesday. Until then, have the best weekend available to you.
Pantsuit Politics is produced by Studio D Podcast Production.
Elise Knapp is our managing director. Maggie Penton is our director of community engagement.
Xander Singh is the composer of our theme music with inspiration from original work by Dante Lima.
Our show is listener supported. Special thanks to our executive producers.
Church in Kilmarnock, Virginia.
Laura Martin.
Kristen Wendell.
Christina Werner.
Kimberly Ludwig.
Julie Huff.
Jill Biziano.
Jessica Borrow.
Jan Feltz.
Jackie Franklin Earp.
Heather Ericacy.
The Charney family.
Ellen Burns.
Connie Perchetti.
Christian Campbell.
Beth Loy.
Ashley Terry.
Anya Binsaka.
Carla Hegemeister.
Emily Ho.
Emily Grover Kopek.
Christy Johnson.
Sharice Winter.
Ashley Kennedy.
Mark and Rachel Redman.
The Dixon family.
Liz Kamenetz.
Christy Matthews.
Kaylee Adcock.
Jill Jacqueline.
Caroline Ahern.
Laura Tennant.
Chelsea Garter, Ellen Scott and Karen Shoebottom, Jeff Davis, Kathleen Gallant, Michelle Wood, Nicole Burkloss, Norma Starry, Paula Bremer, Sarah Little, Vicki Jackman, Will and Jess Conway, Molly Smith, Melinda Mullet, Amy Flannery, Janelle Baker.